Hello everybody and welcome to the first Startup Grind Rush event of the 2021. We are so happy to see you all and can't wait to see you in person when it will be possible. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Alex Klamis and I'm chapter director of the Startup Grind Russia and venture partners at SeedStars. I'm also running the local community Startup Russia, so you can join if you want. I'd also like to thank Dennis and Ask VC for supporting and leading this fireside chat with Brian. Brian, welcome and thanks for joining us today. So I would like to say a couple of words about Startup Grind and its values. Startup Grind is the biggest independent startup community with the chapters all around the world. We are connecting entrepreneurs and inspire them to grow their businesses. Our key values are making friends, not the connections, help others first, not yourself, and give rather than you take. Without these values, we would just be a series of networking events, but Startup Grind is more than this. So, welcome and have a great time.
Thanks everyone for joining us today, and thanks Brian for taking time to talk to us today about Berkley SkyDeck. I guess we will wait a couple of minutes before more participants join. A quick introduction about myself. I'm a principal at New York VC A2B Global Ventures, and for quite a while I've been doing some education and education webinars for startups covering various topics on business, going global, expanding, raising money. And today I decided it would be really cool to talk to one of the top US accelerators, Berkley SkyDeck, and to learn more what they're exactly looking for and how they could help out international startup to expand to the US. Here we have Brian. Brian, maybe you could do your short introduction about yourself and about Berkley SkyDeck.
Yeah, happy to do that. And thanks for joining everybody. I'm Brian Bordley. I'm a principal with the Berkley SkyDeck Fund, which is the partner investment firm of the SkyDeck Accelerator. A little bit of my background, and I can talk more about the program, but I worked at, I think, 5 startups before I joined a venture firm. Several had exits. One of them is about to IPO. And I did also spend some time as a founder myself back right after college. I founded a 3D printing company. SkyDeck itself, we operate a venture fund, and there is an accelerator really focused on helping international companies access Silicon Valley, get the right advisors here, find new customers here, maybe build a small business development team or marketing team out here. And then after kind of our program, we really help our teams make sure that they're raising money from the top seed firms in Silicon Valley. Our fund is backed by Sequoia Capital, so they invested in our firm. In order to help us find a lot of new companies that potentially they could invest in, as well as a variety of other VCs are investors in our fund. The big, I think, news is, our next applications are opening up on January 25th. The program starts in May, so we're looking to further get the word out there to more entrepreneurs in Russia and the region. And we've, I think at this point, backed 5 other Russian teams. We are an active investor in companies from the region, and have really been impressed by not just the technical talent from the region, but also the founders' ability to hustle, to close customers, and to really build good teams.
Yeah, and by the way, we have mutual investments with you guys as well.
Yes, we do. First of many, I hope.
So, Brian, when I hear about SkyDeck, the first thing comes to mind is that you're a deep tech accelerator and deep tech focused fund. So tell me about your current investment focus and what types of technologies and startups and business models are a good fit for you. what are not, so that our participants understand if they're.
Yeah, so we definitely do a little bit of everything. I do think we have an expertise and a nice focus on deeper tech or more IP-driven businesses. About 40% of our teams or so are PhD led, or there's a PhD on the co-founding team. But of course, that means there's 60% that aren't. So really from a breakdown standpoint, we're looking at typically, I think about 40 to 50% of our companies are enterprise focused or B2B focused. 20% or so are life science focused. 20% are hardware, and then we have anywhere between 10 to about, I would say 10 to 15% really focused on consumer technology. So we definitely do a little bit of everything. I think what we're really looking at is first and foremost, we look for great founders. I'd say that's I think the overriding commonality amongst SkyDeck teams is just the quality of our founders, the ethos of our founders, who they are. After that, I would say we're looking generally for one of two things to really impress us. And it could be both. We're either looking for some very, very interesting technology, and or some pretty interesting traction. I think for a handful of our, especially more consumer-focused teams, they've come into us with $30,000 a month, $50,000 a month, even $60,000 a month in revenue before the program. So we're looking at kind of like, is there really unique IP? And I would say the more unique IP, maybe the less traction we might need. The more it looks like maybe a consumer business or a regular B2B business. We probably want to see more traction. And then we are, I think, looking for that venture scalable market, right? What is this overall market size? And is there the ability to generate $1, $2, $5 billion a year eventually in revenue? That might be split across, several competitors. But is there that kind of venture scale to that market? So that's, I think, really what we're focusing on. I mean, for us, I think we think that product still needs time to learn. Maybe about a third of our teams really have product market fit. I guess if we exclude life science, because that's really, a whole different game, probably about half our teams have product market fit and half of them are very close to it. So that's kind of, something that we can play around with a little bit. Same with business model, that's something that we really encourage our teams to learn, talk to customers about. Those things are very flexible, while the team, the core technology, and the market size, those are things that we kind of, are maybe a little less flexible about in some way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, expanding on my previous question is, speaking of the traction and how the team look like, or the startup business look like, what would be a good fit, or what would be too early for them to apply to the program? Maybe some red flags, or not red flags, but what is not a good fit, like
I mean, as I say to everyone, even if you're very, very early, please do apply. I mean, we definitely take a couple very early teams that we just really, really like the founders. And it's very common for a company to apply to SkyDeck 2 or even 3 times before they get into our program. We actually have, one company that I think they applied for a cohort in mid 2019. And we stayed in touch. They sent me investor updates, and now was the time that they were ready when their traction really grew. So I don't think there's a too early to apply, but in terms of, some data, at least, I mean, I think typically the average age of our companies are 18 months old. So, that means we have some 6-month-old companies and we have some 3-year-old companies. But kind of the average age is 18 months. And I'm trying to think of other kind of red flags that we look for. I mean, I think the things that I think we most commonly will deny teams for is, one, an idea that, we think it's just been done. It really isn't. And so if there's really no competitive differentiation, there's a lot of competition in the market. There's someone in the U.S. that really already owns this space. I think it's very unlikely. It's hard for us to invest. And then, I think the market size is the other big question. We'll look at ideas and we'll say, cool, this is a very interesting business, and we could totally see this business generating $50 million a year in revenue, but we don't necessarily see how this business can hit the true venture scale, really get to that $1 billion mark. And so I think those are kind of the big reasons. I guess the final reason would be there's no, CTO, there's no technical co-founder. If we don't see a technical co-founder, we'll also pretty much always pass on that company. I don't think we've had too many of those problems with our Russian companies, at least. A lot of great technical co-founders are from that region.
Yeah, sometimes people lack strong business expertise, but when it comes to technical things, we like to do it.
Yeah, we don't mind the lack of, we don't mind the lack of business expertise. I think we very commonly end up with technical CEOs. I would say, probably 85% of our CEOs are technical. And then, we really consider ourselves to be the product, the business model, the go-to-market, the customer development experts. And so that's what we love. We love a CEO who can close maybe 1 or 2 customers, and we're going to help them build processes and a network in order to close another 3, 5, 10 customers during the program.
Yeah, so let's talk about an interesting part. So how an international startup can benefit from participating in your program, especially if they are expanding to the US market, they still don't have a foot there. So
yeah, I think there's a couple kind of things to think about there. First, our program has gone virtual. I think that is one thing to really note. The program is, all of our education, all of our networking is done now virtually, which in some ways I think has been, bad. I think the big negative there is that you don't really become friends with the fellow co-founders in your cohort in the same way. It makes sense. You can't share coffee, you can't share beers, you can't cry on each other's shoulders. So those relationships, aren't as strong as with our in-person programs. But in many ways, I think a virtual world has proven that a community and ecosystem like SkyDeck is even more important to the success of a startup. And the reason behind that being, it's harder to go out and build these connections on your own. So, what do we think about for benefiting our program? Our program is designed to be a lot longer than a traditional accelerator. Most accelerators are talking about, 3 months, you're learning some things in 2 or 3 weeks. You go to market for 4 to 6 weeks, and then, you try to fundraise for 2 weeks, and you keep your fingers crossed. And that's a model that definitely works for certain programs. I think I can say this at least somewhat confidently. I've been a founder. I've gone through 3 accelerators myself. I think we have the most hands-on startup accelerator probably in the world right now. And the 6 months program is designed because we want our companies to have time to learn, to try new things. We understand that building a network out here takes time. Building trust out here takes time. And oftentimes the customers that our companies are working with, it's not a 2-week iteration cycle on customer development or product development. It might take 1, 2, 3 months, 4 months to close a big customer deal. So we want to make sure our companies have time to get that market validation before they go out and fundraise. But in terms of really tactical ways that we help, the first 6 weeks of our program, maybe let's call it the first month of our program, we really focus on kind of training our teams on the basics of Silicon Valley entrepreneurship, the language people use, the approaches investors use to value businesses, go-to-market strategies, design. And during that first 4 weeks, our teams get paired off with 3 equity-free advisors that come from the SkyDeck Advisor Network. And you can go to SkyDeck's website and click the team tab and then click the advisors tab and see what we have. The founder of Tesla is one of our many great advisors. Founders of Guitar Hero. and the list really goes on and on. So that's kind of in the first 4 weeks is just bringing on these expertise advisors. We have about 250, and I would just say candidly, I think we have 80 to 90 really strong key advisors that get hands-on with our teams, and those are all equity free. To mention too, we do have a venture capital fund. So the fund invests $105,000 into each of the companies that goes through the program. There is a $5K program fee, but if you get into the program, you are guaranteed the funding. Though we do help our companies establish a Delaware company, a U.S. entity, in order to invest, much like what Study Free has and a lot of our Russian teams have put together. And that's just kind of an important entity, and we have legal partners that help out with that process. So the first 4 weeks is meet your advisors, it's learn, and then we really want to figure out what do you need to do in your business to raise that first institutional seed round. The whole goal of SkyDeck is how do you raise, it's called a $2 to $5 million round of funding after the program. Maybe sometimes that's $1 million, and that's probably okay too. And that's kind of the first 4 weeks. We say, hey, how do you improve your team? How do you improve your traction? How do you improve your product/technology? Then over the next 4 months, we are utilizing the SkyDeck network. SkyDeck itself is run by UC Berkeley. It has great access to professors, to MBAs, to postdocs, to a large alumni network throughout the region and actually throughout the globe. And we help our companies, solve these challenges through the Berkeley Alumni Network. So, typically that means, getting a lot of customer feedback and also getting a lot of customer development. It's not uncommon for a team to come to us. I think the best case scenario was a team that came to us from Armenia. They had about, I think, $3K a month in revenue when they joined the program. And by the time the program was over, they were doing $25K a month in revenue just through our connections. And I think 3 months later, through many of those same connections, they were doing about $50K a month in revenue. And then they closed a seed round from a very prestigious European fund. So, we understand that there's, I think, a lot of fluff in when VCs say they're helpful, just to be totally candid, right? But SkyDeck has a really strong developed platform that every single founder will say, this is unique, this is different, I got tangible value out of the program. So after that first 5 months, right, we've had the training, the advisor matching, we've had 4 months of growth where, we've helped you, maybe find new team members, find new customers, get the right story into place. That's when we focused on fundraising. We run 2 major processes around fundraising. We have a pretty big demo day. I think it's probably the second biggest demo day in Silicon Valley. I mean, I haven't seen the numbers, but it's quite massive. Probably just a little smaller than Y Combinator's, but I think that's all right. Because what we also do is before demo day, we run a process where we having established relationships with a lot of the best VC firms in Silicon Valley, in America, and now more and more throughout Europe. These are the folks that can lead a seed round of funding. They can cut a $1, a $2 million check, and really kind of get that. And they don't need to. They're not followers necessarily. They really are the leaders. We know about there's 150 of them or so, and we invite them to come to SkyDeck before our demo day, and we have a matchmaking process where they get to kind of pick and choose their favorite teams in the cohort. And then our teams get to pitch them with these 30-minute one-on-one sessions with just the investors who opted in. So, we find that to be a very effective process. I mean, typically our teams are meeting somewhere between 20 and 40 really high quality investors before our demo day. And then at our demo day, they're pitching to 500 and maybe they're getting another 10 to 40 leads from demo day. I think, depending on the cohort there. So that's kind of our process. And then once our program's over, everyone's still really a strong member of our community. We have a very active Slack group that our alums and our teams help each other and our advisors help each other on. And I think the reason why, if you want to come to Silicon Valley, I think there's a lot of great reasons to start a company in Russia and to start a company in Argentina and Korea and really all around the world. But Silicon Valley is really nice for, I think, three big reasons. One, I think it really helps you think big. I think over and over and over again, I work with a lot of European founders, and there's so many talented people trying to tackle small problems. And I think that Silicon Valley, when you go through our program, and you access the network here, we really help you think big and get that venture scale story on board. Two, I think the U.S. really does have it's a large homogeneous market with a lot of enterprises and a lot of consumers, both who have capital to spend on technical solutions. So it's just a really good market to go after. And then three, the funding environment out here is really unparalleled. Maybe outside of China, where I think there's also a lot of good funding dynamics. But it's the density of venture capital firms. There's probably more venture capital firms within 100 kilometers of me, maybe 70 kilometers of me, than all of Europe combined, and Russia, and probably like almost Latin America, Canada, like put all those places, Africa, put all of them together, and just this one little region probably has more venture capital in it than most of the world combined. And so that's just that density, that supply and demand mentality. It just makes it a great place to raise money and grow a business.
Yeah, a quick question. Considering the acceleration program, how big is the batch? So it's like Y Combinator has like 200 companies in a batch. What's the story with you guys?
Yeah, and I think it's just different approaches. And if you want to really think about like investor theses, I'll share some information about how investors think, right? I mean, there's a general idea of investors. Do you want to invest in a lot of companies and double down on the winners? At the Series A and Series B, and YC is a big continuity fund. So for them, their whole model is let's get 200 companies out there and really back our favorite 10 to 20 as they start to scale. I mean, maybe they would not like that characterization. That being said, I do think YC is a wonderful program. We've had our companies go through that and be successful. By no means as a founder, I think YC has really a lot of good attributes in terms of brand and a founder network. I think SkyDeck approaches. We really think we're a venture fund. We want to make money. We think we make our money, at that early stage when we make that investment in the teams. And so what that means for us is, we're not trying to invest in 300 companies and in the first, in a cohort and just only, back our few favorites as they start to really break out. Instead, we really look holistically at our companies. We have a batches of typically about averages 20. I think this cohort is 14, so it's a little smaller. I think we chose to do that for some COVID reasons. Next cohort maybe will be probably 14 to 20 as well. We get about 1,800 companies applying, so it is quite competitive. The reason behind that is we want to make sure that there's an excess of all the resources our teams need in the program. I can candidly say there are too many advisors that want to work with you. There are going to be too many office hours to go to for you. There are going to be too many MBAs knocking at your door, asking to work with you. A lot of undergrads trying to work with you. So that's just kind of our approach is, we like to get very hands-on with 15 to 25 teams, and, make sure everyone's really getting the experience and the support that they need.
Sounds great. Tell us about the whole application process, interview process, how it looks like, and how people could get prepared for it. Maybe you recommend some resources.
Yeah.
The topic with YC in our region is widely covered, while it's not that much information about you guys, and would like to learn more how to get prepared.
Yeah. So, I think, I can share some general. I see there's some questions in the chat too. I guess we can get to those at the end of the talk as well. Yeah. Sure. But yeah, I would say, some piece of advice, whether you're applying to us or YC or Techstars, I by no means do I think we're the only program out there. I'm biased, and I think we have something pretty good. I'd say focus on 5 big things. Focus on, I assume you already have a team together. Not much you can do about that, but explain to us in a couple sentences why your team rocks. Explain to us really explain what the problem is and who the customer is. Succinctly, talk about why there's a venture scalable market. I think those are kind of some obvious things. I think the place where to really spend more time for our application is on what really makes you different. What is your competitive advantage? What is your cool technology? What makes you unique? And then I think really kind of showing your traction. How does your current traction, if it's unpaid users, if it's LOIs, if it's 5K a month, 20K a month, 100K a month in revenue, whatever it is, I think really highlighting whatever you can do to showcase that people want what you have. And I don't think enough founders really because it's hard to close customers when you're in your early stage. So, try to do anything you can to say that people want to use your product. So I think really focusing on those 5 areas is key. I think we have, 11 or so questions that require at least a paragraph response. But I think, those 5 areas are really important to focus on, when applying to our program. I think those are kind of the areas I would talk about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And maybe any typical mistakes people do during applications, maybe some technical mistakes.
I don't think it's anything too different. Like I said, we need to make sure there's technical folks on the team. That's really key. So just making sure that's there is nice. I think looking at that traction question, I think is really important. I think that's something that I think a lot of teams who maybe don't have as much traction, but do actually have good customer validation, don't know how to formulate what they have into something that is going to de-risk their business. And then I think really thinking through those competitive dynamics. That's kind of, I don't think there's a lot of typical mistakes, but I think those are the areas that I'm most commonly saying, oh, cool idea. Oh, but look, no competitive differentiation, or look, no one wants this. And so I think those, that's, I think for me, the first pass. If I read a one-liner on the company, literally it's one sentence, the next thing I'm going to do is look at, probably, is there a CTO? Checkbox. Is there competitive differentiation? Checkbox. And then, is there, do people want this? Checkbox. And I think if you literally have a good one sentence and those 3 things checked, at least from my investment approach, that's who I'm trying to interview. That's who I'm trying to talk more to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Let's talk about the interview. So suppose people apply, and how long does it take for them to get in addition to the interview and or rejection, and how the interview looks like? How long it is? Is it a PowerPoint presentation, or how it's look like?
Yeah. So, the application is open on January 25th. They're going to close on February 22nd. So we keep our applications open for about a month. Then it takes us 2 or 3 weeks to go through those applications. Makes sense, right? And so I think people should be hearing back I think we start our interviews in mid to late March, and they go until mid-April. So we have a 20-minute first-round interview. Typically, we interview about 120 teams or so, maybe 150, depending on dynamics. That's 20 minutes. It's all over Zoom. And that one, I think we're trying to, just see how sharp you are as a founder. Do you have good answers? Are you elegant in the way that you answer questions? We don't care about accents. Most our teams have accents. Certainly, it helps to have someone that call who does understand English well for obvious reasons. But we don't hold any some communicative differences against our teams. And so I think of that call, I think we're trying to really probably, if you got an interview with SkyDeck, it's because we liked probably 1 to 3 things about your business. And we probably want to clarify, 1 to 3 things about your business. If there's 5 things that would matter, right? Team, market, technology, competitive differentiation, and traction. So I think we're going to spend the time on the things that we are most worried about. You get an opportunity to pitch for 5 minutes. I really recommend to keep your pitch short, and some people show up with 20-page slides. Honestly, I say like 8 slides at most is not bad for a short pitch, right? Really try to tell your story very succinctly. You can always have backup slides to answer questions. So I would want to, just in general, I think spending more time on Q&A as an investment approach is a good idea. Then about maybe 40 to 50% of companies who get a first-round interview, we will have a second-round interview for. That's an hour-long interview where we, probably trying to get them to know more about the founder. Between that time period, we'll have done some due diligence, and then we're really going to kind of want to just learn more about your business, who you are, and I think in that second interview, also figuring out, what can SkyDeck do to help you. Most accelerators, I think they only do a 20-minute first-round interview. So I do think we always joke at SkyDeck, everyone who gets to a second-round interview, we probably could have accepted because they were probably great. We kind of just have a different approach because we like to keep our cohorts, more compact. And yeah, I think we're trying to figure out, what can you do in the next 6 months to be ready to raise a $2 to $5 million round of funding. So that's, I think, a lot more strategic. Focus on what do you go-to-market strategies. Focus on how you're going to answer these questions, and maybe we'll dive into a little bit more around the product and customer traction.
The second interview actually looks a lot like a meeting with a VC, but you also do this how we can help you part, which is really helpful. By the way, should the people focus, stress what their vision, how they can contribute from SkyDeck in their applications? Would it be a good idea, or it's not that mandatory? You figure it out yourself.
I don't know if we have a question for that. Maybe we do, and if so, we care about that. I'm not sure it makes a massive difference to the interview, to the company getting in. I do think when we interview a company, we are looking for cultural fits. I think SkyDeck has a community where founders really help each other. And that makes a difference, right? I think, especially when we start the interview process. And we do a culture interview as well. So I think that's, probably better times to stress how you want to contribute to a community as well. It's not a huge factor, but, I think, I do think we like team players a lot at SkyDeck.
Yeah, just a quick question. Could you recommend some useful materials, resources? You have a pretty good weekly emailings for potential for people who apply. So anything they need the participants of the webinar need to know about information resources of SkyDeck while they prepare or learn more about you.
Yeah, I shared a link to our one of the pages on our website about the Global Founders Program. I really think that covers basically everything about the program. I wrote it myself after doing a lot of these calls and interviews, and I kind of just put everything right then and there. I think the thing to note for us is, we do always invest $105K into our companies. We always get a net 5% equity for that. It's very common for our companies to have already raised money at a 4, a 6, even a $10 million valuation. So we are able to split up how we invest between safe and common stock, but we do always take 5%. Maybe I'll answer one question here from another Brian. Hi, other Brian. He asked about how do we work with health and biotech startups from abroad, and do we see barriers to working with them? I think the answer is no. We love our biotech founders. We are a very active early stage investor in life science and biotech teams. We have a dedicated advisor community, dedicated programming, dedicated investor community, all focused on life science and biotech companies. And I think in the last 3 years invested in 20 to 30 companies that fit in that category. I think if you're looking at startup programs, I think that, we definitely, there's great reasons to choose us. there's great reasons to choose, potentially look at Y Combinator or Techstars. Oh, by the way, too, we don't mind if someone goes through Techstars and SkyDeck at the same time. That's happened for our teams as well. But for life science, I really don't think you can find anything quite like what we have. I think all of what we do is very unique, but for life science, the access to the entrepreneurs, to the academics that we have in life science is truly unparalleled. So I really encourage, if you do have a biotech startup, we do therapeutics, we do health IT, we do medical devices, diagnostic tools, computational biology, synthetic biology. So yeah, we are quite active investors in that space.
I have the last question on my end, and then we will move forward to the questions of the webinar participants. So tell us a little bit the SkyDeck VC you're working in. So do you focus only on backing the alumni of the Acceleration Program, or you have a broader focus and you're co-investing with?
Yeah, no, we invest basically in the accelerator companies. So we invest, if you get into the program, you are, required and guaranteed to get money. It's part and parcel with the program. And yeah, we do follow-on invest in the next stage of our companies. Not always, but sometimes, if they're raising a seed round of $2 million, $5 million, we might put another 100 to 300K in. But most of our focus is on the accelerator companies and then helping our companies find their next stage of lead investor. So that's kind of our big focus.
Yeah, sorry, and the last small question, maybe you can mention a couple of big success stories, big companies, potentially exits, who are the alumni of SkyDeck, just for our participants,
Yeah, I think on the bigger ones, I think you can think through a handful of companies. Lime, I think, is one of the biggest companies that went through SkyDeck back in 2017 or 16. I forget the exact day when they went through, like the scooter company. Typically many of our companies are more technical, right? They're not the ones who make it to the front page of TechCrunch. But I think some companies that you might, some companies you probably haven't heard of that are doing quite well, like Symbio Robotics is an industrial robotics company. Zendit is a large payments company in Southeast Asia. More recently from Armenia, there's a company called Crisp who went through our program in 2018 of our first cohort, who's really been growing and scaling quite well. We recently had a $300 million exit in a company called IOTA Biosciences. From Russia and the teams that we've invested in, our fund is only 3 years old, even though SkyDeck itself is about 9 years old. I think probably I think Dasha is doing quite well with Study Free, but we had a company called Intento come through as well. That I think is really doing quite well. So yeah, I think average follow-on funding rates. Typically, I think 60 to 70% of our teams are raising follow-on capital. Another 10 to 15% are raising grant money or becoming profitable. I think we've only had about 10 to 15% of our companies die at this point. So our companies are staying alive. They are getting funded. They are finding customers. We really, I think we really focus on the fundamentals of the business.
While I'm looking for
I see the question. I see the questions. One, do we work with startups in the firearm industry? We haven't yet. So I don't know if we have a formulated thesis on firearms at SkyDeck. We have worked with several companies that work with the military in the U.S., a drone security company, and a sensing company that's worked with the U.S. military. Haven't anything in the firearm industry yet, and I encourage you to apply. And I don't think we wouldn't interview a firearm company. I think we're always happy to learn more about businesses.
Another question is top 5 questions SkyDeck guys ask on the interview. I guess you covered them, but maybe
yeah. I don't know if we have a top 5. I think we spend a lot of time on competitive differentiation, traction, product readiness, technology, market size. Those are the big things I think we look at. Somebody else asked, are we going to help find a co-founder? Yeah, and we help our companies, especially our technical teams, find business co-founders or business leads in the US. Very common for that to happen. We even see some of our SkyDeck advisors join our teams full time if everything makes sense for both parties. So we definitely like to help our teams grow their teams. Our teams, find new team members.
Maybe while we are waiting for other questions, there is something I forgot to ask, but you think it's relevant to cover today?
Questions? No, I think we got to a lot of it. Yeah, I think in general we would love to see you all apply to our program. Would love to see you get the word out to a lot of other founders in Russia and in the region. We are quite an active investor, in those areas. And I think Russia and I think a lot of former USSR companies. Or countries. We back companies from those countries, from the Ukraine, from Armenia, and so yeah, we really like to get the word out there. I think we have a really strong community, and yeah, we love to see more founders apply.
Yeah, and as a wrap up, let's once again repeat what are the the deadlines and the dates to remember.
January 25th is when the applications open. They close on February 22nd, and the program starts I think on May 3rd or 4th. It's on our website, so right around that. Maybe one of those. Yeah, exactly. So that's the dates, and you can find more information on our website. And right now, even if you go to our website, there's an apply button that takes you to a type form, and fill it out. At the very least, it'll help me notify you about the applications when they open.
Here is one more question about geopolitics. Are there any barriers for Russian founders they need to keep in mind when they apply, or it's not that relevant?
None that I know of. Who knows? Stuff changes by the minute these days, as you all probably can see with America sometimes. But no, we've invested in a bunch of Russian companies before. So I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that in the future.
Okay, thank you. And Maxim is asking, what type of visa will be required for the participants in the program? Any limitations or visa questions they need to solve right now? Because currently it's quite difficult. But
I am not the total expert on these visas. All I know is we've had a lot of companies, maybe COVID specifically is weird, which, our program is virtual right now. But, we've had a lot of founders from Russia, from, other former USSR countries, come here, get visas here, move here full time. We connect our teams to the right legal partners, and such. I see a question as well about what the hot desk program is. The hot desk program is an incubator track program that's really just available for Berkeley folks. And typically that's, Berkeley undergrads. So it's not really relevant for the full program and the funding, and nor to any of the companies here.
It's kind of an education.
Yeah, it's a lot of students we're helping out, or maybe a couple earlier stage teams or whatever it's going to be. Good. Well, I thank you so much for having me, Dennis, and I really appreciate being here. And of course, I really appreciate working with you, and hopefully we'll share more cap tables in the future as well.
So I hope that's so. Thank you.
When I come to Russia, you'll have to. When I come to Moscow, you'll show me around, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
So, Brian, thank you for your time today. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.